On Tuesday, Press Secretary Jen Psaki raised some eyebrows announcing a White House effort to engage in targeted door-to-door outreach to the sick, to the poor, to the downtrodden, to you idiot unvaccinated rubes who clearly don't know what's good for you.
The president will outline 5 areas his team is focused on to get more Americans vaccinated. 1, targeted community-by-community door-to-door outreach to get remaining Americans vaccinated by ensuring they have the information they need on how both safe and accessible the vaccine is.
We'll leave it to Joe and company to make me disappointed that the knock at my door isn't the Jehovah's Witnesses. But beyond how twisted this sort of weird evangelism is, there's a subtle premise in Psaki's language that's crucial to understand. She says remaining Americans will get vaccinated when they have the information that they need, as though the only reason the unjabbed remain unjabbed is that they haven't yet heard of her Lord and Savior, Dr. Fauci. They have. In every hour of every day for months. They have the information. It's almost impossible to hide from the information these days. They just made a decision that's different from the one that you want them to, Jen. And knocking on their door to bother them is far more likely to harden their resistance to you than it is to convert them. In other words, they aren't uninformed. They just disagree with you on a matter of personal choice, which leaves a couple options. You could just respect that decision and move on, or you could try to get a little more forceful about it. When door knocking doesn't work, door kicking is the next tactic for people who fundamentally don't believe in your right to make decisions for yourself. And to be fair, nobody in the administration is talking about overt acts of force like that, at least just yet. But they are dabbling awfully close to it. A lot of questions have to be inferred from Psaki's commentary. Is it really the government's role to monitor my medical decisions? And are they already doing that? How do they know which doors to knock on? Are they maintaining a list? And if the White House believes in free choice, why are they so dead set on everyone making one choice? These are questions that Jen Psaki didn't explicitly ask or answer, but other members of the administration are confirming that the White House is actively thinking about and perhaps is already decided on. No, it's not Jose Diarrhea. No, it's not Jorge Taqueria. It's HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra.
For Secretary of Health and Education Service, I nominated Xavier Becerra.
Close enough, Mr. President. Becerra appeared on CNN on Thursday to address some of Psaki's comments and the reaction. And rather than clarify some limitations or counter the conclusions people are drawing by extending her logic, Becerra didn't just confirm Psaki's comments as accurate. He actually defended them as good and expanded upon them. And he gets right to the point. He says, your medical records and decisions aren't just the government's business. It's actually the government's right to know all about them and to try to direct them, or at least strongly influence those decisions.
I wonder if you can answer that criticism. It's none of the government's business knowing who has or hasn't been vaccinated. What do you say?
Perhaps we should point out that the federal government has had to spend trillions of dollars to try to keep Americans alive during this pandemic. So it is absolutely the government's business. It is taxpayers' business if we have to continue to spend money to try to keep people from contracting COVID and helping reopen the economy.
Well, here's another option. Stop taking our money and stop interfering with our ability to make it. We don't need you to take our money to get permission to make more of it to provide for ourselves. He's talking like the money he spends is his. We invested trillions. No, you didn't. You took trillions. We invested in you. You didn't invest in us. And that's putting it kindly, because you pointed a gun at us to get that investment. But even if it was his money, the reasoning is still garbage. Does the investment of money create an obligation for someone else to consume the end product? Of course not. If the government or any actual business with its own actual money invested trillions in tricycle development, does that give them the right to force a tricycle upon you? We spent trillions on this, so God damn it, you're going to pedal clownishly to work from now on. We spent the money, so that makes it our business. And maybe that hypothetical is actually too clownish, you might think. Fine. Let's take something that's more realistic and more to the theme and the point. Federal, state, and local governments already spend over $1 trillion annually on healthcare services. Does that existing spending entitle them to other intrusions in your health and lifestyle decisions? Should the government monitor your diet? Should the same state evangelists knock on your door after your visit to the drive-thru to spread the good word of kale? Because clearly you don't have enough information to make good choices for yourself. If not, why not? Because after all, the government invests heavily in healthcare. Surely we as tax-paying providers of your Medicare or your Medicaid, or at least just the 911 dispatch after your heart attack, surely we have a right to evaluate and influence your dietary choices. They affect us all. And speaking of your choices, take note of how this guy views your right to make them. Your right to associate freely and your right to make health and lifestyle decisions for yourself. These are both rewards that he thinks he controls and can use as bait to influence you, and they're obstacles in his exercise of that control over you.
It is our business to try to make sure Americans can prosper, Americans can freely associate. You read off some of the comments of some representatives in Congress, and that particular type of thinking is not, it's out there. We hope people make the right choices. We want them to have the right information. But we are America. We try to give people as much freedom and choice as possible. But clearly, when over 600,000 Americans have died, the best choice is to get vaccinated.
Well, first of all, nobody needs state intervention to freely associate. Your intervention, by definition, obstructs association. It makes it no longer free. All you have to do to facilitate free association is shut the hell up and go away. But second, notice the way he characterizes your freedom to make choices. That congressman's commentary that he said was out there, that was Andy Biggs simply saying it's none of the government's business knowing who has or has not been vaccinated. If that's way out there, then what's supposedly inside the bounds of normal thinking? That government should be monitoring our choices and categorizing us as good little subjects or bad misbehaviors to be corrected? He's saying that respecting choice is fringe and weird. Monitoring and attempting to influence or even direct choice is the norm. How do we know? It's right there in his language. He says he wants to give people only, quote, the sense of freedom to choose.
We want to give people a sense that they have the freedom to choose, but we hope they choose to live.
Okay, we don't have the sense of rights. We have rights, and you don't give them to us. They're ours by nature. It is shocking how philosophically twisted one sentence can be. This guy has no understanding of rights and no understanding of where they come from. Our right is not just to believe that we're free or to be convinced that we're free by Jose Diarrhea's smoke and mirror cart. Our right is to actually be free, and that right is inherent to our humanity. It's not granted by or subject to his manipulation. And that's not just a founding principle of American governance. That's a founding principle of morality. Deception and illusion are not substitutes for justice. To illustrate the point, what's more important? Not to steal from somebody, or just for that person to believe that no theft happened? If I steal a Snickers bar from a store, so long as I give the sense that I bought it, say I use counterfeit money, for example, does that erase the wrong, or has more wrong actually been committed? The sense of justice is not what matters. Only justice does. And the same goes for your freedom. The sense of your freedom holds no inherent value. Only your actual freedom does. And anybody who tells you otherwise is exactly the sort of person who would come to your door and try to coerce you into living a life according to their direction, because they don't actually value your freedom and your rights first. Freedom and rights aren't inherent goods to these people. They're simply tools to use toward their ends. So I don't see concern about these statements as exaggerated or alarmist at all. I think Jen and Jorge's comments are indicative of a philosophical distortion that will prove itself more threatening over time. When you don't build the foundation correctly, the house is doomed to crumble. So it would be wise to pay attention to those cracks. I just hope that when they do knock on my door, they bring Beto's line of riflemen to take my guns, too. Better yet, I hope the guns that they use to take my guns have syringes for bayonets. That way, when they point them at me, it'll be 2 birds, 1 stone, and all my state-approved choices will be made for me efficiently. Now, you can call that scenario absurd. We'll see. But if you ask me, the only absurd thing about it is government efficiency. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Minds. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to come out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Good night.